Why are you here? I didn't expect to find my Apache neighbor washing dishes in my kitchen." The walls were lined with books he had collected over the years, and soft music often played in the background while he cooked his dinner. He liked these moments of solitude. They gave him time to think, to reflect, and sometimes to forget about the stresses of the outside world. That evening, Alex unlocked the door and stepped inside. The familiar scent of his apartment greeted him, freshly cleaned floors, a faint hint of lavender from the candle he had lit earlier in the week. He dropped his bag on the floor and rubbed his tired eyes. It had been another long day at work, filled with meetings, deadlines, and emails that never seemed to end. He had looked forward to this moment all day, the moment when he could finally relax and enjoy a simple dinner in peace. As he walked toward the kitchen, however, he heard something unusual. It was a soft clinking sound, almost like the sound of dishes being washed. He paused and frowned. That sound definitely didn't belong in his kitchen. He hadn't left anything in the sink, and there was no reason for dishes to be clattering around. His heartbeat quickened slightly as he approached the doorway, and then he saw her. Maria, his neighbor from next door, was standing at his sink, washing dishes. She didn't flinch or seem startled as he froze in the doorway. She was calm, almost casual, as if being in someone else's apartment was the most normal thing in the world. Her dark hair was pulled back into a loose braid, and she wore a simple shirt and jeans. The sunlight from the kitchen window lit her face, and for a moment Alex couldn't find the words to speak. Maria," he finally managed to say, his voice shaky. What are you doing here?" Maria turned and gave him a gentle smile. "I noticed you seemed stressed earlier," she said quietly. "I thought I'd help." Alex blinked. Stressed. He had been stressed, yes, but that didn't explain why she was standing in his kitchen, scrubbing his dishes. He opened his mouth to say something, but the words caught in his throat. He had never had a neighbor just walk into his apartment, let alone start cleaning for him. He wanted to feel annoyed, maybe even angry, but all he could feel was a mix of confusion and surprise. He had known Maria for a while. They waved to each other in the hallway, sometimes exchanged a few words about the weather or the neighborhood, but that was as far as their interactions had gone. She was always polite, friendly, but distant enough to respect boundaries. And yet here she was in his kitchen, helping him in a way he hadn't expected. Maria rinsed a plate and placed it carefully in the drying rack. "You work so hard," she said softly. "I thought maybe a little help could make your evening easier." Alex finally found his voice, though it was quiet. I don't know what to say. I mean, thank you, I guess, but why my kitchen?" Maria shrugged slightly. "I live next door. I know what it's like to feel tired after a long day." Sometimes a small act of kindness can make a big difference. Alex felt a strange warmth spread through him. Her words weren't just polite, they were sincere. He could see it in the way she moved, carefully washing each dish as if it mattered. For some reason, it made him feel seen, noticed, even cared for in a way he hadn't realized he needed. He walked closer, still unsure, and leaned against the doorway. I didn't expect this," he admitted. "I know," Maria said, smiling again. "Sometimes the unexpected is the best thing." Alex watched her work, feeling a mix of emotions he couldn't quite name. There was embarrassment, certainly. He had always been private, and having someone in his apartment without warning felt invasive. But there was also a strange sense of comfort. He realized that this wasn't about control or boundaries. It was about connection, about someone noticing that he needed help and offering it freely. After a few moments, Maria finished washing the last plate and dried her hands on a towel. She turned to face Alex fully. "Do you want some tea? I can make it for you while you sit down." Alex hesitated. Tea wasn't something he would normally share with a neighbor, but something about her presence made him feel safe. "Okay," he said finally. They moved to the small dining table near the window. Maria poured steaming cups of tea and handed one to Alex. He took a tentative sip, the warmth spreading through his hands and chest. For the first time that day, he felt a sense of calm he hadn't realized he was missing. As they sat together, Maria began to tell small stories about her life, about her family, about traditions she grew up with as an Apache woman. She spoke gently, without any expectation, as if sharing these stories was as natural as breathing. Alex listened, fascinated. He had never really thought about her life beyond brief hallway conversations. Now, hearing her speak, he realized how much depth and richness there was in her experiences. He asked questions, curious, and she answered with patience and warmth. She spoke of her childhood, growing up in a close-knit community, of lessons learned from elders about kindness and respect, and of the importance of helping others without expecting anything in return. Alex felt himself drawn into her world, feeling a connection that went beyond simple neighborly politeness. Hours seemed to pass quickly. Alex found himself laughing at her anecdotes, nodding along with her observations, and even sharing small details about his own life that he usually kept private. There was something about Maria's presence that made it easy to open up, to let go of the walls he had built around himself. By the time she stood to leave, Alex felt a strange sense of gratitude he couldn't fully explain. "Thank you," he said sincerely. I didn't expect this, but I'm glad it happened." Maria smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "Sometimes life gives us little surprises," she said. "The best ones often come when we least expect them." She gathered her things and walked toward the door, leaving Alex in his kitchen. He looked around at the dishes she had washed, the small gestures of care she had left behind, and felt a deep sense of appreciation. That night, as he cleaned up the rest of his kitchen and prepared for bed, he thought about what had just happened. He realized that life had a way of pushing him out of his comfort zone, not through grand events or dramatic changes, but through small, unexpected acts of kindness. A neighbor washing dishes in his kitchen, something so simple, yet so profoundly moving, had reminded him of the importance of connection, empathy, and openness. As he turned off the lights and settled into bed, Alex couldn't help but smile. He didn't know when or why Maria had chosen that moment to visit, but he knew one thing for certain. Life could be unpredictable, sometimes startling, and often unexpectedly beautiful. And in that quiet, reflective moment, he realized that perhaps the world was full of small surprises waiting to be noticed, small gestures that could change a day or even a life, in ways one could never predict. After that unexpected evening, Alex found himself thinking about Maria more than he had expected. He couldn't quite shake the memory of her standing in his kitchen, calmly washing dishes, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her presence had left a quiet mark on him, a feeling that was both comforting and puzzling. He realized that he had never truly known his neighbor beyond brief greetings in the hallway, and now somehow a door had been opened, a door into her world, and perhaps even into his own. The next morning, Alex woke up earlier than usual. His thoughts kept returning to Maria and the stories she had shared. He remembered her speaking about Apache traditions, about family, about helping others. There was a gentle strength in her voice that he couldn't forget. It wasn't the kind of strength that demanded attention or respect. It was quiet, natural, the kind that made people feel safe and seen. As he prepared his breakfast, he reflected on his own life. He had always been independent, preferring solitude over company. He liked being in control of his own space, his routines, and his evenings. Yet, in that moment, he realized how lonely those routines had sometimes made him. He rarely let anyone in, rarely asked for help, and often convinced himself that he didn't need anyone. But watching Maria move around his kitchen had made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time: connection. Later that day, while checking his mailbox, Alex ran into Maria in the hallway. She smiled warmly at him, carrying a small basket. "Good morning, Alex," she said. "I brought you a little something." Alex blinked in surprise. "You didn't have to," he said, feeling slightly embarrassed. Maria shrugged, her braids swinging over her shoulder. "I wanted to. It's just a small treat, some bread I baked this morning. I thought you might enjoy it." He took the basket and looked inside. The bread smelled fresh and comforting with a hint of honey. He felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't expected. "Thank you, Maria. Really," he said sincerely. She nodded and smiled before continuing down the hallway. Alex watched her go, thinking about how simple gestures like this could make a difference. She didn't ask for anything in return. She wasn't trying to impress him or gain favor. She simply noticed someone who could use a little kindness and offered it freely. That evening, Alex decided to take a walk in the nearby park. He wanted to clear his mind, to think about the unexpected connection he was forming with his neighbor. As he walked, he remembered the first time he had truly looked at Maria, not just as a friendly neighbor, but as a person with her own story, her own experiences, her own strengths. He realized how easy it had been to overlook the people around him, to take their presence for granted, and to assume that life was meant to be lived alone. A few days later, Alex found himself in the kitchen again, this time preparing dinner. He had always enjoyed cooking, but now he felt a subtle longing for shared experiences. As he chopped vegetables, he thought about Maria's stories, the lessons from her elders, the importance of community, and the idea that small acts of care could create meaningful connections. When he finished, he decided to do something unusual. He walked next door and knocked on Maria's door. She opened it almost immediately, smiling as if she had been expecting him. "Hi, Alex," she said warmly. "What brings you here?" Alex hesitated for a moment. I wanted to thank you properly, and maybe I thought we could share a meal." Maria's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." Inside her apartment, the atmosphere was different from his own. Her space was filled with small mementos of family, photographs, and handmade decorations. It was warm, inviting, and full of life. They cooked together, sharing tasks and stories as they worked. Maria taught him how to make a traditional Apache dish, explaining each step patiently. Alex found himself laughing at his mistakes, enjoying the process more than the result. Over dinner, they shared stories about their lives. Maria spoke about growing up in a close-knit community where neighbors were like extended family, and where helping each other was part of everyday life. She described the challenges her family had faced and how those experiences had taught her resilience, empathy, and the value of small, meaningful gestures. Alex listened intently. He realized how much he had been missing by keeping to himself. He had spent years focusing on work, on routines, and on solitude, believing that independence meant strength. But now he saw that strength could also come from trust, from allowing others in, and from sharing moments of life, no matter how small. As the evening progressed, Alex found himself opening up in ways he rarely had. He spoke about his childhood, his dreams, and his fears. Maria listened without judgment, her presence reassuring and grounding. For the first time in a long while, Alex felt truly understood. When it was time to leave, Alex felt a sense of reluctance. He had never looked forward to leaving a neighbor's apartment before. Maria walked him to the door, smiling. "Thank you for coming over," she said. "It was nice to share this time with you." "Thank you," Alex replied, feeling a warmth in his chest. I didn't realize how much I needed this." Over the next few weeks, Alex and Maria continued to spend time together. Sometimes it was a shared meal, sometimes a conversation over tea, and sometimes just quiet moments where they sat together, reading or listening to music. Each interaction was simple, yet meaningful. Each one taught Alex more about patience, empathy, and the beauty of unexpected connections. One evening, as they sat together in Alex's kitchen, Maria spoke softly about her Apache heritage. She explained how her community valued relationships over possessions, how respect and kindness were at the center of daily life, and how small gestures, like washing someone's dishes or sharing a meal, were considered acts of honor and care. Alex listened, fascinated. He realized that her actions were not just random kindness. They were deeply rooted in a culture that valued human connection above all else. He began to see the world differently, recognizing that sometimes the lessons we need come from the simplest interactions, the ones we least expect. He thought about his own habits, how he had built walls around himself, how he had avoided asking for help or letting others in. Maria's presence had shown him that vulnerability was not weakness, and that accepting kindness was a form of strength. He felt a growing gratitude for her patience, her warmth, and her willingness to share her life with him. As weeks turned into months, Alex noticed subtle changes in himself. He smiled more, engaged more with neighbors, and began to invite friends over for small dinners. He found joy in the shared experiences that had once seemed foreign to him. And throughout it all, Maria remained a quiet, steady presence, reminding him, through her actions and her words, that life was richer when shared, and that sometimes the most profound lessons came from the people we least expect to teach them. One quiet evening, as Alex and Maria cleaned up after a shared meal, Alex felt a deep sense of peace. He looked around at the kitchen, at the dishes they had washed together, and realized how far he had come in such a short time. The unexpected visit, the simple act of kindness, had opened a door to something new, a friendship, a connection, and a new understanding of life itself. He smiled at Maria, who returned the gesture with a gentle nod. No words were needed. Both knew that the quiet bond they were forming was special, built not on grand gestures or dramatic events, but on simple, everyday acts of care and respect. And in that quiet moment, Alex understood something profound. Sometimes, the people who enter our lives unexpectedly are the ones who teach us the most about ourselves, about kindness, and about the true meaning of community. As he closed his eyes that night, Alex reflected on the weeks that had passed. Life, he realized, was full of surprises, small, gentle, and transformative surprises that often came when he least expected them. And sometimes, a simple neighborly act, like Maria washing dishes in his kitchen, could change the way he saw the world forever. Over the following weeks, Alex began noticing the little ways Maria's presence influenced his life. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. There were no life-changing events, no sudden revelations, but rather a series of small, quiet moments that slowly shifted the way he saw the world. It started with small gestures. One afternoon, Alex returned from work to find a note slipped under his apartment door. It was Maria's handwriting, neat and careful, and it read, "I noticed your plants looked thirsty today. Thought I'd water them while you were gone. Maria." Alex smiled, a warmth spreading through him. It was such a simple act, yet it made him feel seen and cared for. He realized how rarely he had experienced gestures like this before, gestures that were purely about kindness, without any expectation of something in return. Later that evening, he called his friend Jason, someone he hadn't spoken to in weeks. "Hey, wanna grab dinner?" he asked. For some reason, he felt more willing to reach out to connect. Maria's quiet generosity had reminded him that relationships were worth nurturing, that life didn't have to be lived alone. Maria's influence extended beyond these small actions. One day, Alex found himself struggling to fix a leaky faucet in his kitchen. He had never been much of a handyman and usually avoided tasks that required tools or patience. Frustrated, he tried to tighten a valve, only to make the leak worse. Water started dripping faster, and Alex felt his anxiety rise. Before he could panic further, there was a knock on his door. "Need a hand," Maria's voice called gently. He opened the door to see her holding a small toolbox, smiling reassuringly. "I can help," she said. Alex hesitated, feeling a mix of embarrassment and gratitude. He wasn't used to asking for help. Yet, in that moment, he realized that accepting it didn't make him weak, it made him human. He stepped aside, and Maria moved confidently toward the faucet. With careful hands and quiet instructions, she showed him how to tighten the valves, replace the washer, and stop the leak. Alex watched, fascinated. She explained each step patiently, encouraging him to try some of the tasks himself. Slowly he began to understand, learning not just about plumbing but about patience, trust, and collaboration. By the end, the faucet was fixed, and Alex felt a sense of accomplishment he hadn't expected. "See," Maria said with a small smile. "Sometimes it just takes a little guidance and practice." Alex nodded, a warm feeling in his chest. "Thank you, Maria. I don't know what I would have done without you." "It's nothing," she said, shrugging slightly. "Sometimes helping is the simplest way to show we care." That evening, Alex reflected on the faucet incident. It wasn't just about fixing the leak. It was about learning to let someone in, about recognizing that he didn't have to face everything alone. Maria's influence was subtle, but it was reshaping the way he approached life. He was slowly beginning to understand that kindness and trust were not signs of weakness, but of courage. As the weeks passed, their friendship deepened. They shared meals regularly, cooked together, and often stayed up late talking about life. Maria's stories continued to fascinate Alex, stories of her childhood, of her family's struggles and triumphs, of the lessons she had learned from her elders. She spoke about Apache traditions, about the importance of respect, community, and small acts of care. Alex listened intently, absorbing every word. He realized that her teachings were not just about culture, they were about life itself. Through her stories, he began to reflect on his own habits, his tendency to isolate himself, and the barriers he had built around his heart. He saw how much richer life could be when shared, how much lighter burdens became when they were shared with someone who cared. One rainy afternoon, Alex was feeling particularly overwhelmed. Work had been stressful, and he felt trapped by deadlines and expectations. He sat at his kitchen table staring out the window at the gray sky, feeling drained and anxious. A sudden knock on his door startled him. It was Maria, carrying a basket covered with a cloth. "I thought you might like some soup," she said softly. "It's homemade." Alex felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't realized how much he needed this simple gesture, a warm meal, a friendly presence, someone noticing that he was struggling. "Thank you," he whispered, taking the basket. They sat together at his table, sharing the soup in comfortable silence. There was no need for words. Her presence alone was enough to calm him. He realized that true kindness didn't need explanation or justification. It was simply felt, and it could be transformative in ways that nothing else could. As they talked afterward, Maria encouraged Alex to share what had been bothering him. He hesitated at first, but gradually, words began to flow. He spoke about the pressure at work, his fears of failure, and the loneliness he often felt. Maria listened without judgment, nodding and offering gentle advice only when asked. By the end of the conversation, Alex felt lighter, as if a weight he hadn't even known he carried had been lifted. "Sometimes, just sharing is enough," Maria said quietly. "You don't have to carry everything alone." Her words lingered in Alex's mind long after she left. He began to understand that life's burdens could be lessened through connection, and that opening up didn't make him weak, it made him human. In the following weeks, Alex found himself looking forward to these small moments of connection. He invited Maria over for dinner more often, and she accepted gladly, bringing stories, laughter, and her calm presence. They shared quiet mornings with tea, afternoons cooking, and evenings discussing everything from philosophy to favorite childhood memories. Each interaction, no matter how ordinary, felt significant. One evening, as they cleaned up after dinner, Alex realized how much he had changed. He smiled at Maria, thinking about the small, consistent ways she had taught him about life. Through simple gestures, washing dishes, sharing meals, offering advice, or just being present, she had helped him see the world differently. He had learned to appreciate kindness, to value connection, and to embrace vulnerability. Maria noticed his thoughtful expression and smiled. "You're learning to see things differently," she said softly. Alex nodded. "Yes, I am, and I have you to thank for that." "It's not just me," she replied. "It's about noticing the world, noticing people, and being willing to act when you see someone in need. That's something anyone can do." That night, as Alex reflected on the past weeks, he realized that his life had shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. He had always considered himself independent, strong, and self-sufficient. But through his friendship with Maria, he had discovered that strength could also come from openness, empathy, and shared experiences. He had learned that kindness was powerful, not because it demanded recognition, but because it had the ability to transform lives quietly and profoundly. The following weekend, Alex decided to take a small step further. He invited another neighbor, someone he had only exchanged brief greetings with, over for coffee. It was a simple gesture, but it felt monumental for him. Sitting together, sharing stories and laughter, he realized that connection was contagious. Maria had taught him that by simply noticing and caring, he could create ripples of kindness that extended far beyond a single interaction. As the day ended, Alex felt a deep sense of gratitude. Life, he realized, was not about grand gestures or dramatic events. It was about the small, consistent actions that built trust, friendship, and understanding. And in that realization, he found a sense of fulfillment he had never known. He thought about Maria, about the first night she had washed dishes in his kitchen, and smiled. That single, unexpected act had opened a door, not just into her world but into his own. It had taught him lessons about trust, kindness, and connection that no book, no lecture, and no solitary reflection could have offered. Through her presence, Alex discovered that life was full of small surprises, quiet lessons, and meaningful connections waiting to be noticed. And sometimes the simplest acts, washing a dish, sharing a meal, or listening attentively, could transform not just a day, but a life. One rainy afternoon, Alex was struggling with a problem that had nothing to do with feelings or friendship. It was his apartment. The plumbing in his kitchen had suddenly started leaking badly. Water pooled under the sink, dripping steadily onto the floor. No matter how much he tried to tighten the pipes, the leak refused to stop. The faucet had become stubborn, and Alex could feel his frustration rising with every passing minute. He sat on the kitchen floor, wet rag in hand, and sighed. This was one of those moments when he wished for a helping hand, but he hesitated. Asking for help had never been easy for him. He prided himself on independence, on being able to handle things on his own. Yet, as the water continued to drip, he realized that this was beyond his abilities. Just then, there was a gentle knock at his door. Alex froze. Who could it be on a rainy afternoon? He wiped his hands quickly and opened the door to find Maria standing there, holding an umbrella and a small toolbox. "Hi, Alex," she said with a calm smile. "I thought you might need a hand." Alex blinked, a mix of relief and embarrassment washing over him. "Maria, I didn't want to bother you. This is my problem." She shook her head, her braids swinging slightly over her shoulder. "You're not bothering me. I'm happy to help." Sometimes we all need someone to lend a hand. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, letting her in. Maria moved confidently toward the sink, setting down her toolbox. She rolled up her sleeves and began examining the pipes. Alex watched her work, impressed by how calm and methodical she was. She didn't rush, didn't complain, and didn't act as if he had made a mistake by trying to fix it himself. "See this," she said, pointing to a small valve. "It's loose. That's why the water is leaking. We'll tighten it and replace the washer and it should stop." Alex nodded, trying to follow along. "Can I help?" he asked. "Of course," Maria replied, handing him a wrench. "I'll guide you. You don't have to do it alone." For the next hour, they worked together, laughing at small mistakes and celebrating minor victories. Alex learned to tighten the valves, carefully replace the washer, and adjust the faucet. He realized that this was more than plumbing. It was a lesson in patience, trust, and teamwork. "Thank you, Maria," Alex said, finally sitting back as the last drip stopped. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled, drying her hands with a towel. "It's nothing. Sometimes helping is just noticing when someone needs a little support." After the leak was fixed, they sat at the small kitchen table, drinking tea and listening to the rain outside. Alex felt a quiet sense of relief, not just from the problem being solved, but from the presence of someone who genuinely cared. He realized that asking for help didn't make him weak. It made him human, and in that realization, he felt lighter than he had in weeks. The days that followed brought more shared moments between Alex and Maria. Sometimes they would cook together, trying new recipes and laughing over small mistakes. Other times they would sit quietly, listening to music or talking about life. Maria's stories continued to captivate Alex. She spoke about her childhood in an Apache community, about the values of respect, generosity, and empathy that had been passed down through generations. Alex found himself reflecting on his own habits and choices. He had always been independent, often to the point of isolation. He realized that he had built walls around himself, keeping people at a distance, believing that asking for help was a sign of weakness. But Maria had shown him a different way. Through her actions and her presence, she had taught him that trust and connection were powerful, and that vulnerability could be a source of strength. One evening, Alex faced another personal challenge. He had been feeling stressed at work for weeks, and a sudden project crisis left him anxious and overwhelmed. He sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, unsure of how to proceed. His mind raced with worries, and he felt the familiar weight of isolation pressing down on him. Without thinking, he picked up his phone and sent Maria a message. "Can you come over? I need someone to talk to." Within minutes, there was a soft knock at the door. Maria entered with her usual calm presence, carrying a small basket of snacks. "I thought you might like something to eat," she said softly, setting it down on his desk. Alex felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't realized how much he needed this simple gesture, someone noticing that he was struggling and showing up without judgment. "Thank you," he whispered, feeling a mixture of relief and gratitude. They sat together, eating quietly at first. Then Alex began to talk, hesitantly at first, about the stress and pressure he had been feeling. Maria listened patiently, nodding and offering small suggestions only when he asked. She didn't judge, didn't try to fix everything for him. She simply listened, providing a safe space for him to express his worries. By the end of the evening, Alex felt lighter. The weight of isolation and anxiety had lifted, replaced by a sense of connection and understanding. He realized that life didn't have to be faced alone, and that sometimes, sharing your struggles with someone who cared could make all the difference. As the weeks continued, their friendship deepened in other ways too. Maria shared more about her culture, explaining how small acts of service and care were central to her upbringing. She spoke of the importance of community, of noticing when someone needed help, and of offering support without expecting anything in return. Alex found himself inspired. He began to notice small opportunities for kindness in his own life, offering help to neighbors, friends, and even strangers. He realized that life was not just about independence or self-reliance. It was about connection, empathy, and shared experiences. One weekend, a minor accident gave Alex another opportunity to see the strength of their friendship. He had decided to move a heavy bookshelf alone and strained his back in the process. Maria arrived shortly afterward, helping him gently rearrange the furniture and providing ice and advice for his sore muscles. "You don't have to do everything alone," she said kindly. "Life is easier when we support each other." Alex nodded, understanding now more than ever that accepting help was not weakness. It was an acknowledgement of humanity, a way to build trust, and a chance to form meaningful connections. Through all these experiences, the faucet, the leaks, the shared meals, the crises at work, Alex realized that his life had been transformed. He was no longer isolated. He had someone he could rely on, someone who taught him that vulnerability, kindness, and trust were not signs of weakness, but of courage and wisdom. One quiet evening, as Alex and Maria cleaned up after dinner, he looked around at the kitchen. The room was warm, the lights soft, and the atmosphere peaceful. He realized how much he had grown in such a short time, and he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had learned lessons about patience, empathy, connection, and the power of small acts of kindness, lessons he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Maria noticed his thoughtful expression. "You're learning a lot," she said softly, smiling. "I am," Alex admitted. "And I have you to thank for that." She shook her head gently. "It's not just me. Life gives us opportunities to notice, to care, and to act. We just have to be willing." Alex nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace. He knew she was right. Life was full of challenges, of moments that tested patience and strength, but it was also full of opportunities for kindness, trust, and connection. And sometimes, the people who entered our lives unexpectedly were the ones who taught us the most. That night as he lay in bed, Alex reflected on the journey so far. He thought about the rainy afternoons, the broken faucets, the long talks, and the small acts of generosity. Each experience had taught him something new, and each had brought him closer to understanding the value of friendship, trust, and empathy. He realized that Maria's presence in his life had changed him in ways he couldn't have imagined. She had shown him that life was richer when shared, that problems were easier to face when someone was by your side, and that small gestures of kindness could have a lasting impact. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt a quiet gratitude for the unexpected friendship that had entered his life. Life, he understood, was not just about independence or control. It was about noticing the people around you, offering support when it was needed, and allowing yourself to accept care in return. And in that understanding, Alex found a sense of fulfillment and peace that he had never known before. Over time, Alex began to see his apartment and his life differently. What had once been a quiet, solitary space now felt open and inviting. The small routines he had once cherished, cooking for himself, reading in the evening, tidying the kitchen, were still part of his life, but now they were shared, enriched by the presence of others. Maria had shown him the value of connection, the beauty of small acts of kindness, and the importance of letting people in. It started with small gestures that gradually became a habit. Alex began leaving little notes for Maria, thanking her for her help or for simply being a friend. Sometimes he would leave a cup of tea at her door if he had made extra, or a small snack he thought she might enjoy. These gestures weren't about impressing her. They were about reciprocating the care she had shown him. Slowly, he realized that relationships were built not just by grand acts, but by consistent attention, thoughtfulness, and presence. One sunny afternoon, Alex decided to invite a few neighbors over for a casual meal. It was something he would never have imagined doing before, and he felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he prepared. He cooked carefully, choosing dishes he knew people would enjoy, and tidied his apartment in a way that felt more welcoming than before. Maria arrived early, as she often did, bringing fresh bread she had baked. "I thought this would go well with your soup," she said, placing the basket on the table with a warm smile. Alex smiled back, feeling a surge of gratitude. "Thank you, Maria. I couldn't have done this without your encouragement." She shook her head gently. "It's all you. I just helped you see what's possible when you open your home and your heart." The other neighbors arrived soon after, bringing laughter, conversation, and an energy that filled the apartment. Alex found himself at ease, moving between the kitchen and dining area, chatting with people he had only ever exchanged brief greetings with before. He realized how much he had missed out by keeping to himself for so long. Sharing meals, sharing stories, sharing time, these were the things that gave life meaning. As the evening progressed, Alex noticed Maria quietly moving around, helping with small tasks, offering advice here and there but never imposing herself. Her presence was natural, comforting, and effortless. It reminded Alex of all the lessons she had taught him, the importance of kindness, trust, and paying attention to the small things. He realized that her influence had extended far beyond their friendship. It had reshaped the way he saw the world and interacted with others. After the last guest had left, Alex and Maria sat together in the kitchen, cleaning up and reflecting on the evening. The room was quiet, save for the gentle clinking of dishes and the soft hum of the refrigerator. "You did a great job tonight," Maria said softly, smiling. Everyone seemed happy and comfortable. Alex nodded, a warm feeling spreading through him. "I never thought I could host something like this. I always thought I preferred being alone, but now it feels different, better." "That's because you've opened yourself up," Maria replied. "You've learned to let people in, to share your life, and to accept kindness. That makes all the difference." He smiled, thinking back to the first evening she had entered his apartment uninvited. At the time, he had felt confused, even a little violated, but now he understood. That moment had been a catalyst, a quiet spark that had gradually transformed his life. It wasn't just about the dishes she had washed. It was about connection, empathy, and the willingness to trust and care for others. As the weeks turned into months, Alex continued to grow in ways he had never anticipated. He reached out to more neighbors, invited friends over more often, and even volunteered occasionally at a local community center. Maria's presence in his life had shown him that life was richer when shared, and that small acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching the lives of many people in ways he could not always see. One evening, as they sat together enjoying tea, Alex reflected on his journey. "Maria," he said thoughtfully, "I don't think I realized how much I needed all of this. Your friendship, it's changed me in ways I can't even describe." Maria smiled, her eyes warm. "You didn't change overnight, Alex. You allowed yourself to change. I just helped you notice what was already possible." He nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. He had learned that change wasn't always dramatic. It could be quiet, subtle, and gradual, shaped by small gestures, acts of care, and moments of trust. Maria had been a guide, not by instructing him or telling him what to do, but by showing him through her actions that life could be different, fuller, and more meaningful. A few weeks later, Alex received a call from his manager at work. There was an opportunity for a project that required collaboration and leadership. In the past, he might have hesitated, worried about handling it alone. But now, he felt a quiet confidence. He remembered all the lessons from Maria, the value of trust, patience, and seeking help when needed. He accepted the project not with fear, but with a sense of readiness he hadn't felt before. As he worked through the project, he found himself reaching out to colleagues, asking for advice, and collaborating more effectively than ever. The skills he had learned in his personal life, the patience, empathy, and openness, translated seamlessly into his professional life. He realized that growth in one area of life often spills over into others, and that the lessons of friendship and connection were universal. Over time, Alex and Maria's bond remained strong. They continued to share meals, stories, and quiet moments. But now, Alex also shared his growth and experiences with others. He had learned to notice when someone needed help, to offer kindness without expectation, and to embrace the unexpected opportunities life presented. One weekend, they decided to host a small cultural evening at Alex's apartment, inviting neighbors and friends to learn about Apache traditions. Maria prepared stories, songs, and recipes, and Alex helped organize the event. The evening was filled with laughter, learning, and warmth. People shared stories of their own cultures, exchanged ideas, and enjoyed a sense of community that Alex had never experienced before. As the event ended and the guests departed, Alex and Maria sat together, exhausted but happy. "I never imagined this would happen," Alex said softly. "I never thought my apartment could feel like this." Maria smiled. "That's because you opened yourself to it. Life gives us opportunities and we have to be willing to take them." Alex nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. He thought about the first time she had entered his kitchen, washing dishes. That simple, unexpected act had sparked a journey of personal growth, friendship, and community. It had taught him that life was not meant to be faced alone, and that trust, empathy, and kindness were among the most powerful forces in the world. As the night grew quiet, Alex felt a profound gratitude for the unexpected friendships and lessons in his life. He realized that sometimes the people who enter our lives without warning are the ones who change them forever. And sometimes the smallest gestures, the washing of dishes, the offering of a meal, the listening ear can have the deepest impact. Maria looked at him, her eyes calm and kind. "You've grown so much, Alex. I'm proud of you." He smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. "And I'm grateful for you, Maria, for everything." They sat in comfortable silence, enjoying the quiet peace of the evening. Outside, the city lights twinkled softly, and the gentle hum of life continued. Alex knew that his journey of growth and connection was ongoing, that there would always be challenges and surprises. But now, he was ready to face them, with empathy, openness, and a heart willing to accept kindness and friendship. As he turned off the lights and prepared for bed, he reflected on the transformation in his life. From a quiet, solitary existence, he had moved into a world filled with connection, trust, and shared experiences. He had learned to open his heart, to accept help, and to offer it in return. He had discovered that life's true richness was not in possessions or achievements, but in relationships, understanding, and the simple acts of care that bound people together. And in that quiet moment, as he closed his eyes, Alex knew something profound. Life was full of unexpected surprises, waiting to teach, to guide, and to connect. All it took was openness, trust, and the courage to let someone in.